It's now 2 after 11. Just wanted to thank all of the club operators, owners, people who are generally interested that are volunteering as board members or staff at golf courses for attending this morning. We have Thomas Strzecki from the BRT who has stated that he will come and join us. So good morning, Thomas. I'm not sure if you saw my chat, but if you do need to do a share screen of anything this morning, please let me know and I'll make you a co-host. But folks, what we were trying to do, again, we aren't lobbying the BRT for any new measures. What we are doing is just wanted to have a friendly gathering with the people who are direct access with the Saskatchewan Health Authority and with the government to come on and basically provide us some insights on the golf guidelines and answer any questions that you may have, just to make sure that you're hearing it directly from the folks who are putting this out forward to golf courses under the golf guidelines in the Reopen Saskatchewan plan. So without further ado, I will stand out of the way and I will let Thomas take over. And if you do have any questions, you feel free, you can use the space bar if you're using a computer, or if you want to, you can just ask in the chat function. We can unmute you if you're having any issues, or if you're on a call in, we can definitely do that. But feel free to also use the chat function on the side. And my staff or myself will monitor it and we'll ask Thomas just in case you don't want to speak publicly. So good morning and welcome. And Thomas, I'll put it in your hands.
Thank you, Brian. No, it's greatly appreciated. So good morning, everyone. I'm Thomas Strzecki. I'm with the business response team. Just a little bit about myself before we get into introduction of Ken Duick, who's also on the call with us this morning. My home position's with the Ministry of Education, where I'm advisor to the Deputy Minister's office. So I was able to come over to the BRT to kind of add a northern perspective and a few other different types of perspectives about 7 months ago. So it's been a good opportunity, and at the same time, golf and everything that goes around golf has been one of those pieces that I've had the opportunity to work on. So first and foremost, thank you so much for the opportunity. And secondly, thank you to the sector for the great work that you have been doing in terms of not only giving good suggestions to how things should operate, operating golf courses safely, and of course, ensuring that the individuals using golf courses are safe, and also I guess I would say the ambition of creating a system that really is following the Reopen guidelines as well as the Reopen map. And as we go forward, more opportunities for the sector to get back to that normal. I myself, not a very good golfer, but I love golfing and obviously fairly active with our golf course here in La Ronge. Have really noticed that people have taken to golf as not only a means for safe socialization, but also a means for mental health and every other parameter that goes with it. So I think golf courses in this province have been playing a very important role, not only for the residents of Saskatchewan, but as a whole business community to see that, things can get better and things are going well, even with the certain parameters that we have to work within. So I'll just turn it over to Ken to give a bit of an introduction of himself and go from there. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Thomas, for that introduction. I'm Ken Duick. I'm the Executive Director of the Business Response Team. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and Brian for bringing folks together. Just as a little way of background, the Business Response Team was started last March, so March 2020, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And in particular, it was started to provide businesses and employers a way to contact the government in a coordinated way as we navigated through the emergency order and the public health orders. It's obviously evolved a fair bit since then, as we've had the Reopen Saskatchewan plan that was released last spring. And then, of course, we've had numerous updates to the public health orders and the Reopen Saskatchewan plan guidelines throughout that time period. And of course, most recently, the roadmap to reopening, which is our three-step approach to reopening the province this summer. And as Thomas, many of my employees are much like Thomas. They've been redeployed from various areas of the government and have really stepped up to be able to provide a good service to business and the rest of society. So as I mentioned, the business response team has evolved to become really the front line for the entire public, not just business and employers, but sports associations, places of worship, cultural organizations, pretty much everything, casinos, and to help you navigate through what has become a very complicated system of restrictions. So, we've got 3 public health orders now to be aware of, and a Reopen Saskatchewan plan that's 190 pages long. And now we've got the Reopen Saskatchewan roadmap. So it is a lot to kind of navigate through. So I'm happy to be here today to talk with you about some of the questions that you might have. But I do want to echo Thomas's comments that, golf has been really good to work with, in particular last spring, and getting some things opened up outdoors that can be operated safely. And I think that your track record from last year served you well in terms of being able to open this spring as well, and be able to follow along with those guidelines and keep things safe, but also have a little bit of loosening of restrictions for golf courses this spring. So as we move forward with the 3-step plan, that's likely going to relax even further. We're not exactly sure what step 3 looks like now, but we know that in step 2, we're going to be seeing a significant loosening of restrictions for sports activities again. So maybe I'll leave it there and turn it over to Brian in terms of managing any of the questions that we kind of want to work through today. Or seeing that Brian has not on. Is there somebody else on from the Golf Saskatchewan end that can kind of coordinate some questions here?
Yeah, my apologies, Ken. I'm back here, and I just missed your first one. So someone was just asking if Ken Morrow is on the call, and that one I don't think is important at the moment. That's the only thing at the moment.
Okay. Did you want to work through any of the questions, Brian, that we had seen kind of ahead of time?
We can. Would you like to start off the one that, again, probably has the most feedback and response, but just underneath tournaments, obviously with the tee times and the possibility of the shotgun option, just so that they can hear from yourself and Thomas?
Sure, I can maybe turn it over to Thomas to kind of speak to that one, because he's been dealing directly with public health on this particular one. But this is actually, I was very pleased to kind of see this be something that was allowable this spring. So it's one of the changes, having tournament play be allowed. And really the argument that we used to be able to get this to go ahead is that, the game of golf really doesn't change if you're playing a tournament or if you're just playing a regular round of golf. The game of golf is still the game of golf, and you can do things safely so long as you can ensure that, people are separated and organized in a good way. So, I just really encourage folks in this regard to have really good plans for the arrival of the participants and keeping them physically distanced from each other. Have those staggered times where they can arrive and be able to control any kind of those choke points that you might have, to be able to manage things so that you can have a number of people on the golf course during these shotgun starts. But I think that your participants are going to really appreciate it if it's really well organized, and that they're coming in and feel like there's a really strong entry process that they can follow to make sure that everybody's separated and kept safe. I don't know, Thomas, did you have anything else to add on the tournament side and the shotgun starts?
No, I think you've explained it quite well, Ken. I think the only other part that I would add is obviously as a BRT and as the government of Saskatchewan, it's the restrictions obviously have a role to play, and it's very important to follow the restrictions. At the same time, it's about mitigating risk and some of those parameters around that. So when we did, initially there was about 36 players per 9 holes, then it went up to the 72, with full knowledge that golf courses in the golf sector is mitigating those risks. So there's no reason why you can't have those two groups spaced out on the other side of the tee box, for example. And I know that courses will continue to do that. So when in doubt, err on the side of caution. But we know, and for the golf courses that I was able to participate in over the course of last summer, everywhere you went, people were very cognizant on making sure that you're mitigating that risk. So if you are spacing so important, and as Ken said, the enjoyable experience then goes not only for the participants, but for everybody else that's around that sector, because golf has such a great name in this province, and that's what we want to continue to keep up.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. And maybe I'll just add to that, speaking of having a great name, please communicate to your participants that you don't want to see, congregation of folks, before or after the tournament, in the parking lots, kind of at the clubhouse, that kind of a thing. All eyes are on everybody right now. And all it takes is for somebody to take a video of your parking lot during one of these shotgun start tournaments to see a whole bunch of people gathered in there, and not necessarily following along with the physical distancing and really the organized entry and exit for these types of things. So you're all going to want to keep, especially over the next, I'm going to say 6 weeks or so, as we progress through step 1 and step 2 of the roadmap. People are going to want to be very still cognizant of following the public health orders and not giving even the impression that that's not happening. So I will say that there are some sports organizations that feel like some folks like golf are getting special treatment by having their own kind of set of guidelines and being able to do some things that maybe they're not. And so, all eyes are on you, and I'd really encourage you to make sure that you're aware of that and that your participants are following along and being compliant with what it is that you're asking them to do.
Perfect. So Ken and Thomas, if I can just have you touch on one of the items that's coming up is after a golf game or an event or a ladies' night or men's night is the question of food. If food is prepackaged and ready for a box pickup or a delivery, is that still okay? However, I know that one of the questions is, as we move into phase 1, 2, and 3, the question of sit-down meals, whether they're served or potentially a buffet style. Can you just touch on the food? And again, just to make sure that people are hearing it verbally from you two, would be really highly beneficial.
Yeah, well, currently, of course, in Regina, we've got different restrictions for restaurants. In general, the clubhouses should be following the restaurant guidelines, so making sure that you're paying attention to those. It is shifting a little bit over the next couple of weeks. So, we're going to be going from 4 people per table up to 6 people per table. Takeout and delivery options. So a prepackaged meal for takeout is certainly permissible. That is something that would be permitted. Buffets are still not permitted. I actually not sure how that's going to work for step 2. The changes are that there may be some changes to that. I know that some restaurants have pivoted to be able to manage a buffet style experience and still kind of operate within guidelines. But that would mean people not dishing out their own meals, that there would be a chef or a server there that would actually be plating things for people. So you wouldn't have multiple people kind of dipping their hands in So there is a way to do that type of food service as we get into the steps, but it's definitely not something that's permitted at this point.
Okay. With the events and again with food, with folks who are coming to a golf course, one of the you talked about trying to avoid choke points, but people haven't seen one another in a while, and you might have some folks who are very excited. And again, one of the concerns that has come into our office, and again, we don't have the authority to answer the questions, but for instance, if you have a gathering that's coming on and 70, and we're going to pick on the men here, 70 men are going to want to accumulate and meet in the clubhouse before they start. Something that we obviously want to avoid having. But if there are people in a clubhouse and they're standing under the current order, you still need to wear a mask. I just wanted to confirm that and avoid those congregation of people unless you have a very large facility. Would you concur with that, Ken and Thomas?
Yeah, anything indoors, you need to be following the public health order. And so there is a masking order for indoor spaces in Saskatchewan. So yes, indoors, masks are required, even if it's just for a brief period, even if it's just to enter the facility to go to the washroom, a mask is required to enter the building. There are not requirements to wear masks outdoors. And so you don't need to be requiring that. But in terms of discouraging that gathering and the choke points, I would say signs, and make sure that you reinforce these messages on any of your online booking systems or any of that kind of communication as people are coming in. I think it's particularly important for that tournament play, but I think for regular play as well, information, and make sure what's expected of folks. And yes, keep those indoor gatherings down to a minimum, and keep people moving through, and make sure that they're encouraged to not linger and visit. And I do realize that people are excited and ready to go outside, but especially over this next I'm going to say 6 weeks or so, vigilance is going to be very important. And we certainly don't want to be in a situation like Alberta where we've taken two steps forward and then have to take 2 steps back because we see a number of spikes in cases as a result of large gatherings.
Okay. Ken and Thomas, one of the questions that came in is an interesting one. Since our deck is part of outdoor dining in the lounge area, the course was told that everyone has to wear a mask on the deck unless they are seated. Is that correct?
It depends on the situation. And so public health, if you've been given that direction from a public health official, then you should follow that direction. I don't know the specific situation. I know that some public health officials have deemed even the patios to be indoor spaces, kind of depending on their airflow and configuration. So there is some specificity involved in that. Generally speaking, outdoors, you shouldn't have to be wearing a mask, but in-person dining, it is still encouraged that people wear masks, particularly indoors, and you're only removing it when you're eating or drinking.
Thanks, Ken. This question is, with loosening restrictions and allowing 6 people to sit at a table, this is great. Typically, golfers sit in groups of 4 because that's the group that they've played with, and loosening the rule to 10 feet between tables would be preferential. Is there consideration of reducing the table spacings?
Yes, actually, that is, let me just bring it up. I don't remember actually which step that's in. It might actually be step 1 where that is happening.
I know that in step 2, Ken, it's going to be 2 meters of physical distancing between tables for a maximum of 6 patrons per table in step 2. So I'm not sure what step 1 there is.
Step one. It's being reduced from 3 meters to 2 meters of physical distance must be maintained between tables. or a structural barrier must be in place between tables when 2 meters of distance is not possible. So I know some restaurant facilities that installed that plexiglass. So that would be in place of the 2 meters distancing, kind of between booths and that kind of a thing. Yes, well, as we get into step one, which is May 30th, the requirement of 3 meters of distance between tables will be reduced down to 2 meters. But you should note that 2 meters is kind of between people. It's not like from the center of the table or even the side of the table out to the side of the next table. It's kind of from the back of the person's chair sitting at the table to the back of the next person's chair sitting at the next table. So just kind of keep that in mind, that when you're kind of making those calculations and configuring your tables to ensure that that 2 meters distance, really it's 2 meters distance between people, and ensure that that's actually possible with the configuration as you're setting up your tables.
Sure. Ken, just so that folks can hear it, if Clubhouse has not installed barriers but are looking to do so, is there a height recommendation that the plexiglass barriers or something should be in between tables? Is it 3 feet above seated patrons' heads? Is it 4 feet? Is there a recommendation?
I can look into that. My recommendation is that if you have not done this already, I would recommend that you do not do it.
Okay.
Because we're talking about a time-limited problem here. We're going to be heading into a step in our reopening roadmap here that we're not going to have this level of specificity when it comes to restrictions in all of our activities in Saskatchewan. So as we get into step 3 in July, hopefully, we're not going to be seeing this kind of level of specificity. And in fact, I kind of pick on golf at times. And I know that, the business response team worked very closely with golf to come up with the guidelines last spring. But, having to have the doohickey to pull your ball out of the hole, that's the kind of specificity that this is why it's 200 pages now. And we're really trying to get out of that as we get into the next steps in reopening Saskatchewan. So if you haven't installed physical barriers to this point, I would not do that. I would not invest that money and spend the money to do that at this point.
Okay, well, thanks, Ken, for that one. Again, the reason why some of these questions are asked is we've got a number of veteran people who have been, this is now the 14th month for this pandemic that they've been going through, but we also have some brand new to golf operators where, again, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And if someone has it, we're just seeing if we can answer this. But with that food and with sizes, if outdoor gatherings are moving to that 150 people starting on May 3rd or May 30th, they're looking at having outdoor sittings for banquet or for functions in a tournament. And can that be done so within a tent? And I guess that'd be a temporary structure. And I'm hoping that's without sides on it, or maybe it does have sides on it. Is there any leniencies if the structure is not permanent, just temporary?
I would encourage you to move that into step 2 and along that timeline. In my mind, a tent is a structure, and so that would be considered an indoor space. I mean, obviously, there's if you just had the roof and not the walls, there'd be some debate over that. In order to be safe, I would not do that type of thing. We're really talking about probably about a 3-week period between step 1 and step 2, provided that we can kind of meet our benchmarks. So this is a time limited problem. I would avoid any kind of potential issues associated with that as we kind of make our way through step 1. One of the things that the roadmap to reopening is being getting some good comments on is that it's a cautious approach to reopening. So even the medical health community has been giving it some positive reviews because it's cautious, it's based on science, it's based on getting people vaccinated. That's what we've seen in other places. It's going to get us to a place where we're going to be able to have these kinds of things with shared meals and larger gathering sizes. So as we progress through that, I'd encourage people to be vigilant and cautious and keep that in mind. We definitely don't want to, press a little bit too hard and work to, take two steps back where we've taken a step forward. And we certainly don't want to have that to happen. So as we get into step two, things like banquet and conference facilities open up. That means that those types of meals and that kind of a thing can progress so long as they're following the restaurant guidelines for food service, and that would be the more appropriate time to embark upon those types of things.
Okay. There was just a clarification. So for a men's night and that clarification for the buffet setting, if staff serves food, is that or is that not allowed? Somebody was just mentioning that an answer was muffled. They just wanted to make sure to hear from you.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? So what's entailed in the men's night?
So a men's night, it's for food service in a buffet setting. If staff is the one who are serving or plating the food as people come through, is that or can that be allowed?
In step two, yes.
Okay. So in step two, that service can be allowed for the group that asked the question. The next one was, again, one that I do thank Ken and Thomas for providing, but just so that it's talked about today, is power carts. So we had gone through, and both you, Ken, and Thomas had talked about the common step approach, which is walking is preferred. Single rider carts would be the next best method. However, if a golf course isn't able to, then people from the same household can obviously ride carts. But if a person is not from the same household, it's now dependent. And I'll get you to talk about this from that standpoint. Again, it's not illegal. People don't necessarily have to wear masks, but can you just discuss maybe some best practices or from the BRT's vantage point on carts?
Yeah, I think that, this would be up to your judgment a bit. I think it would be, encouraged to wear masks while riding the carts if you're not from the same household. It's certainly not a requirement. There are no public health orders that mandate mask wearing outdoors. But I'll give you this example. So we worked really hard with the ski hill operators this fall to come up with a plan to be able to open up the ski hills. And we actually used and we leveraged a lot of the stuff that we had worked on with golf to be able to allow them to open. And, this was at the height of our restrictions. We were under the strictest restrictions that we had been under during that time. And we were successful in getting them to be allowed to open. But one of the things that I think probably pushed it over the line a little bit was that the ski hill operators voluntarily came up with a policy that said that in order to protect their staff and the people that were going to be coming to the ski hill, they were going to mandate mask wearing at their facility, both indoors and outdoors. So everybody going to the ski hill had to wear masks as they were lining up to the chairlift, but also while they were skiing and during the entire time. And as a result, we did not have a single outbreak linked to a ski hill this year, despite the fact that they didn't have a gathering limit restriction, much like a golf course, and we didn't have a workplace outbreak there as well because of their commitment to keeping their staff safe through some of those strong measures. So it's certainly up to you whether or not you want to institute that, but I would suggest that was something that the ski hill operators chose to do as a group and make as a policy on their own at their facilities.
Okay. So this question is on that buffet item again. Currently, it's an understanding that hotels in their food service areas are allowed to do buffets. And you were mentioning that phase 2 for golf courses. Is there a difference in the food service thing from a hotel can and a golf venue or a resort area for a golf course?
Well, banquet facilities are not actually permitted to serve food at this point. So that's not correct. They can in their restaurants, but they are not permitted to serve food in their meeting rooms and conference facilities currently. So there isn't a difference there. So I guess that would be the answer on that one.
Okay. Just taking a look at another one of the comments here. So this is this question is or statement. It says our clubhouse just had a buffet a la carte for Mother's Day. It really allows staff to prepare for a very busy night. Customers would stay seated and order what they want off of the buffet, and staff would plate and serve it as they normally would. They also had a steam table blocked off so that the public would not, there would be no temptation of the public to self-serve. Is that again, this is from one of our clubs?
Now that's certainly how to do the buffet service. So I'm not sure which community that would be in, but so, you know, if they're following along with the restaurant guidelines, then that would be permissible.
Thank you. One of the question that is on a few people's minds, and you talked about it earlier about lifters, and then there's also flag stick, ball washers, and rakes. Is there a point this summer where the business response team and Saskatchewan Health Authority might just say, "Hey, golf and the industry, welcome back to, you know, prior to COVID-19"? Is that something that the industry, you know, might be a possibility in 2021?
Yes. God, yes.
So that is affirmative.
Yes. That could be as early as step 2.
Okay.
Most certainly by step 3.
Yeah. Well, for something that was put in as a health measure, I can know that as an amateur body, the question as to what is a hole in one is what is hold and what is for score purposes. I don't think I've answered that question so many times. I felt I might as well be paid by the BRT for that one. So
my favorite one is tennis, and there's actually a great YouTube video of a public health official in New York State trying to explain how to not handle other people's tennis balls. There's really no graceful way of talking about
that. No, there isn't. Here's a question for Ken and Thomas, and it says, is a golf course able to expand their deck? Oops, my whole question just disappeared. Is a golf course able to expand their deck or outdoor space uncovered to seat more people for functions such as tournaments and weddings or receptions?
Well, so long as you're staying within the public health order gathering limits, yes. Yeah, I'd have to. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to kind of send that idea through to the BRT just so that we can kind of take a look at it. But you know, I think that's possible. And so for that step 1, you know, technically, I suppose you can have 150 persons, but as I said, it would really be preferable to kind of move that type of activity into step 2. So we're talking kind of that last week in June.
Okay. Question with alcohol service. Is there any plans on extending the service availability beyond the 10 p.m.?
Let's just check my materials here. I don't see that in step one. Yeah, I don't see that in step two either. So that'll require a change to the public health order. That's a really good question, and that's something that I'll have to get back to you on, Brian.
Nope, that's
I,
great.
I haven't actually seen anything in terms of whether or not that time of day restriction is going to be lifted. It will be at some point. I'm just not exactly sure at this point when that will be. Most certainly by step three, so that'll be kind of mid-July, but it's possible it could be lifted before then.
Okay. One of our clubhouse operators just asked again, just for clarification, is it a must to have a pre-booked tee time, or is it just a recommendation? So can a person who does not have a pre-booked tee time come in basically off the street and book a time, or pardon me, and get a time?
Did we not take that out this last time around, Thomas?
Yeah, I believe we did, but again, if it's on the website, I think it was still there, but in the reopened guideline, I think it's clarified in the digital PDF version.
So it's certainly preferred, but yeah, I don't think there's anything that prohibits it at this point.
All right. I guess the last one, and again, this goes to the men's nights, ladies' nights, and tournaments. This virtual presentations, again, to make sure you're not having a pile of people into the clubhouse. Can you just go through your preference or your stance on this as from the BRT?
Yeah, well, it would be really doing it like this. So just like we're doing our meeting now, I mean, it's virtual. It's not in person.
Okay. If there happens to be for a champion or a club champion, if it's a social distance picture with the president of the golf club and the winner, just as a quick snapshot and then gone, is that okay?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Again, the person who won the closest to the pin or a long drive on a stake that somebody put, they don't have to stick around for that. That can be handed out and they pick it up the next time they come to the golf course.
Yep.
Perfect. No, Brian, I'm just going to add, I know that, some golf courses and some other organizations have really, cracked down on touching things. So the spike and everything else and whatnot, but it's just, again, about mitigating risk. So if someone washes their hands, puts it out there, somebody brings it back to the clubhouse and sanitizes their hands, the risk is very low, and then you're mitigating that risk, right? So common sense again, and without feeling that people are breaking rules, but at the same time, just ensuring safety.
Okay.
That's a really good point, Thomas. And I think when the golf guidelines initially came out, there was a lot more concern about transmission by touching objects and then touching your face and that kind of a thing. And I think that over time we've come to the realization that this is largely an airborne illness, and that there's relatively little transmission that happens kind of by touching things. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be following the cleaning and sanitization guidelines, but I think it's a little bit lower risk than what people thought initially.
Okay. What's the BRT's thoughts on during a corporate event or a corporate hosting on an event on a golf course? Are drink holes a good idea, a bad idea from the BRT's perspective during an event?
Well, anytime you introduce alcohol, it can become a bad idea. But so I definitely discourage it at the beginning of the year. As we get into the later steps, perhaps even as early as step 2, perhaps that's less of a concern. So I guess my advice would be proceed cautiously. It's definitely something that I don't know that it's prohibited in the guidelines, but again, it's one of those things where all it takes is somebody to be taking a video of something and it makes it out there, and then it causes public health officials to cringe and go, hey, maybe we need to prohibit this activity, or maybe we need to tell golf to back down on these types of events. So I would proceed very cautiously, and if folks are wanting to do that later in the year, in late June and July, that would be more advisable.
So Ken and Thomas, if I put a different hat and brought that same item under a different perspective, and that is it's being personed by a staff member wearing a mask, and it's done so in a controlled setting, similar to a beverage cart, but it's just not mobile. Could that be an option? Again, this is now a person who's gone through some training, etc., as an alternative. Again, it might not be for liquor. It could be for things like a sandwich, a prepared hot dog, or water.
Yeah, again, I don't think that it's specifically prohibited, and so you can use your judgment a bit in terms of how to operate those things. But again, I think it would be advisable to move those types of activities into step 2 and that late June and July kind of time period. But I don't know, Thomas. I don't think that that's specifically prohibited in the guidelines at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely not prohibited. But again, you've got that opportunity to weigh out the risks and pros and cons of the situation. And again, with phase 2 or step 2 happening very shortly, I definitely would side on the, obviously go with the side of caution on that one, Brian.
Okay, thank you. This is a social question, and it's regarding, again, it's off property because it's using in this example as a parking lot. Must we stick strictly to our foursomes in the parking lot, or are we able to social distance? And can there be 10 of you in a parking lot?
Well, this is exactly kind of what I'm talking about, is I think you want to discourage people from socializing and mingling in the parking lots. That was actually something that the Ski Hills controlled very carefully. They actually had staff people monitoring the parking lots because that's exactly what it was that they were concerned about. And, perhaps in Ski Hills, it was a little bit different because people were encouraged to kind of go to their cars and warm up and that kind of a thing. And so you really didn't want to have a congregation of people kind of socializing in the parking lot. So there's a little bit more of that activity. But I would encourage you to, in all of your communications, on your online bookings and signage in the parking lot, to say, don't linger, don't socialize in the parking lots. Please keep everybody safe as we kind of make our way through these first couple of steps of the plan. And I know everybody's excited to kind of get out there, but let's not try and bend the rules just so that we can have that little bit of extra socializing and be happy that you can do the activity at this point.
Yeah, I'd also caution our operators that you might want to check with your SLGA rep as to exactly where your liquor license starts and stops. And I don't believe that extends to the parking lot, and maybe never has unless you get a special permit. In step 2, Ken and Thomas, will golf courses be allowed to expand foursomes to eightsomes or tensomes for some tournaments or corporate events?
It's possible. I'm not familiar with that format, but I think we could see some sports restrictions lifting pretty significantly in step 2.
Okay, just for the BRT, because it does state within our golf guidelines that foursomes is what's required. We might need again, if that is in fact, we might need just an amendment to the current guideline, because it does say right now in there that foursomes is the max.
Brian, we can work on that with some pieces that we can think about for phase 2 or step 2. Sorry, I should use the right terminology. So you and I can connect on that and go forward with that.
Perfect. One of the questions that has been asked is, what constitutes frequent cleaning of washrooms? That would be indoor and outdoors from the BRT or from Sask Health.
Yeah, I don't think there's a definition of that. So I think there's some judgment involved there. So I would clean them as frequently as you can. And the cleaner they are, the more confidence that the patrons will have in your facility.
All right. And with the potential good news that you provided with the flagstick being able to be removed, so again, I guess the person is just making a point that with pulling the flagstick be an option soon, so that they know that it's not a transmission point now. So I think you answered that one earlier.
Yeah, we'll get to that point for sure.
Wonderful. Well, unless some folks have some other ones, I think we've made it to the bottom of this particular session. But I do thank Ken and Thomas and the extended staff for coming on and taking time out of your day on a Friday to answer some of these questions directly. I think that it's been very beneficial, and hopefully that we'll look back on this in 10 years' time and kind of have a chuckle about it again, not for anyone that's been harmed and family members lost and golf patrons, but we'll look at it going, holy, can you believe that we actually made it through that? So again, on behalf of Golf Saskatchewan, our board and our members and member clubs, thanks very much for taking this time and for not only working with golf, but also the other sports within the Sask sport, because this is not an easy job that you folks have been tasked with.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.